Departments don't usually fail overnight. They crack quietly. One resignation that doesn't get filled. One burned out employee holding everything together. One leader who tells themselves, "We'll get through this," until one day the department stops functioning. And everyone wonders how it got here. Across local government, people are leaving. And when they do, the damage goes far beyond a vacancy on an org chart. Culture erodes, trust collapses. Remaining staff carry impossible loads. In today's episode of Gov360, we're talking about why people leave local government, what a truly broken department looks like from the inside, and how courageous leaders can rebuild trust, culture, and hope, even when things feel far beyond repair. Because these are the moments that define you as a leader. Welcome to Gov360, your full circle view on local government leadership. If you value conversations like this on leadership and the future of local government, take a moment to subscribe to the Gov360 YouTube channel. It helps more professionals discover the show and keeps you connected to future episodes. Today's conversation is about a moment many leaders experience, but few talk about openly, when a department starts to break and the people inside it begin to leave. And for city managers and department heads, these moments can feel deeply personal, isolating, and overwhelming. With me today are Sophia Selavanoff and Ashley Metzger with Regional Government Services. RGS works with cities, counties, and special districts across California, often stepping in during moments of transition, crisis, or instability. They don't just see the data, they step inside departments that are struggling to hold together. Today, we're talking about what they see, what leaders often miss, and what it really takes to rebuild after things fall apart. Ashley and Sophia, welcome to Gov360. Really glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So let's start here. You come into a city that is struggling, a department that's struggling. What is it that indicates to you right off the bat that this isn't just a department that's busy? This is a department that's in trouble.
I think the fundamental thing that you observe is that people are disengaged. They're doing as little as possible with as few people as possible. They're not volunteering for anything. You know, we often don't know these people, but if you knew them, you would see the change from them being a talker in meetings to being silent in meetings.
You know, we're all busy in cities, right? Most cities are understaffed. Most departments are struggling just to keep up with the workload. But there is a difference between a department that is busy and a department that's in trouble, right? What within the first few days do you see that tells you this department's really in trouble?
I think when we're working with folks, if you get to a meeting a little bit early and people aren't really talking, everyone's kind of looking at their phone, doodling in a notepad.
Interesting.
Not really engaging with other team members is a big signal. And, you know, sometimes you can feel the tension in the room. You know, there's just kind of a frigid air and it feels a little bit hostile, you know, and it's not always so palpable, but when things are really not going well, it is.
How long do you think that dysfunction can exist below the surface where it's not visible?
Quite a long time. It takes a great deal to dislodge a person from a place of comfort and security, and they will stick around, withdrawn, disengaged, not functioning correctly for possibly years.
Can you walk us through a department that you've experienced that was going through this? You don't have to name the department, name the city.
We would not do that.
But can you walk us through what you witnessed, what that experience was like, what you think the people who worked in the department were experiencing, were feeling?
I've done so many assessments with organizations where, you know, I've sat down with staff in a struggling department and asked them to talk about what was working well and what wasn't working well. And I think one of the things that's very striking is how much more willing they are to trust me, a total stranger, with the truth of their experience than their own bosses, because I will ask them also, did you speak to your supervisor about this? What have you attempted to address this situation? And they don't bring it up inside the organization.
They're scared to.
Yes.
So again, walk us through what that looks like. So I guess let's start with, how do you get involved in the first place?
We usually get a call from some new person who's walked into a troublesome situation and wants our help, or we get a call when a leader has left and the organization has not replaced yet, and this seems an opportune moment to those making the replacement decision to really figure out something isn't working here. What is that? What kind of new leader should we get? And what do we need to do in the meantime?
This might be a good opportunity to pause for a moment and talk about what RGS is, because RGS is actually a public entity, right? It's a joint powers authority, which is fascinating to me. The way you operate is something we might expect to see from a private consulting firm, right? But you're a JPA, right? So when someone reaches out to RGS, is it typically a city manager? Is it typically a department head? Is it an elected official?
I think all of the above. We get calls from governing body members who say, we're losing a chief exec, and while we're making the search, we'd like to have some understanding of what's going on in the organization. We get calls from city managers who say, we've got a department head with a problem. Either they're still here or they're on their way out, and before we, re-engage with a new one, let's dig in. Department heads sometimes call us too. They recognize they're having a problem, or they're the new person who walked into this and they're like, oh, that's not what I thought.
Now, Sophia, much of your background is in human resources.
It is.
Right? You and I have a couple things in common, by the way. We both have an educational background in psychology. For me, it was my undergrad. For you, undergrad and master's.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And we have a Texas connection. You Texas A&M, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I grew up in the Dallas area.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. But I have very little HR background other than, how I've touched it as a city manager, and then prior to my work in local government in the private sector dealing with employees. But my background is not strictly in HR. It sounds like a lot of what RGS does is HR related. Is that accurate?
I would say RGS is very well known for its HR consulting work and its financial consulting work. The core of public administration. We are public administrators, all of us who do this work. We've been there, we've done it, and now we want to help our colleagues.
Are you typically coming in from an HR perspective, or is it something else?
I think we're coming in more as people who want to understand the dynamic than as people bringing any particular professional discipline to the situation. Some of the problems would be solved by different financial strategies, some of them by different management strategies, some of them by different workflows and communication strategies. I mean, there are many issues at work here. They're very rarely a matter of let's change this HR policy and do something different in HR. HR tends to be involved because these are the people, right? We think of HR when we think of our people, but there are lots of facets to these issues.
A lot of people are leaving local government now. It's something that I hear a lot. It's something we've addressed on this show in the past. Episode 7, we talked with Jacob Green, and a lot of what he does is working with local government entities, whether it's cities or counties. But his employees are by and large former public employees, typically at the executive level. Former city managers, department heads who have left. And one of the interesting things that he told me is that when he started his business, he would often get phone calls from people who were looking to transition into the private sector, but they were end of career, right? They were, maybe a city manager who was recently retired or getting ready to retire, or a department head getting ready to retire. A greater percentage now of the calls he gets are mid-career professionals who just want out. They're just burned out. There's so much toxicity now in local government. This erosion of, civility in public discourse. The keyboard warriors and people showing up and just being vicious at city council meetings. With social media, the spread of misinformation and how difficult it is to get the real facts out. And it sometimes feels like you can't keep up with the misinformation on social media. And it's just, for a lot of people, an overwhelmingly toxic environment, and they just want out. So the conversation with Jacob was fascinating to me because he really talked about how so many people still want to serve, right? They believe in the mission. They haven't lost faith in service to the public, but they're looking for different ways because the environment has just been too toxic. Is that something you're seeing a lot of, that people are getting burned out because of just the environment around the organization, as opposed to the organization itself? Or are you mostly seeing there are issues internally within the organization that need to be fixed, or some combination of the two?
I think we often see systemic issues. So not necessarily that any one individual is in there wreaking havoc. Sometimes that is the case, and we've certainly seen that. But oftentimes it's the way that the culture exists and the framework that everyone has kind of bought into and is used to, but not necessarily happy with. And then slowly over time, it becomes less and less effective. So that's kind of the systemic at the agency level issue. But I hear what you're saying about this broader issue in local government, and being an all remote public agency, we actually get inquiries from people who want to come join RGS and be part of our team. And our demographics have been shifting from people who were at the end of their career and working with RGS in their retirement to more mid-career professionals as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're on to something there.
As a public entity, are you within a public retirement system?
No, we have a 401A retirement program.
Okay. Yeah, there's one city in Riverside County that is that way as well.
There are a number of agencies around the state that have elected that. It's a hard choice for them to make because there's so much pressure to be a defined benefit system, but I think it's a good choice.
I managed the city of Canyon Lake years ago, and when I was with the city of Canyon Lake, the city broke from the county's contract with the county for fire services and started a fire department. Well, the city was under CalPERS, but per the city's contract with CalPERS, if it ever started its own public safety, they were excluded. And so while I'm sure CalPERS would have loved to renegotiate that contract and fix that, and no one could tell me, it was so long ago, no one knew or remember, there's no documentation of why that existed. So the fire department was, fire department was defined contribution instead of defined benefit. And it was one of the reasons why it made sense for the city to go in that direction. It went with a PARS retirement plan, and the city still put in 7%, the employee put in 7%, but there was no ongoing liability for the city. But it's fascinating how much pushback the city received from surrounding fire departments, and just because they weren't CalPERS, didn't feel like they were part of the team somehow, I guess. Okay, so I'd like to get back to the employee experience. So an employee is in a department's really struggling. I'd like to really tap into what you've experienced in terms of what that's like for the employee. What is it that they're feeling? What is it they're going through? And when you step in, what is it that ultimately makes them feel that relief? Okay, this is going to be okay. We're going to be able to turn this around.
I think that the departments that are in trouble, as opposed to the ones that are just really overwhelmingly busy, are the ones where the employees don't see any hope on the horizon of things changing or improving or somehow being able to deliver what it is they came to public service to deliver. I mean, it's just, they're doing drudgery and falling ever further behind, or worse yet, anytime they try to do something productive, they get stomped on, right? So I think when you see a department in trouble, you see people without hope, and all of the symptoms that go along with that. People are depressed, people are withdrawn, they may not actually leave, but their minds and hearts have left.
I would imagine for a department head, this has to be a very challenging thing to face, right? Do you often find the department heads in the departments where you're coming in to work resistant, or are they the ones that have asked for the help?
It really depends on the situation. I think people welcome an outside perspective if they are feeling confident and secure and have that psychological safety. But if the environment that they're in is toxic and everyone's kind of looking over their back and there's lots of CYA, then it's a little bit of a different story. There have been situations in which we're brought in and there's a little bit of hostility up front about our involvement, but by and large, I think people see the investment in outside help as maybe a signal that change might be possible, that, hey, maybe this could be a turning point. So it is nice to come in, and the first thing we're always doing is listening and trying to understand the context and what people have been experiencing. And sometimes these people just haven't been listened to, or they haven't shared because they know that nothing's going to come of it. So generally when we get involved, we do see people at different levels of the organization receptive to sharing with us.
That's good. Yeah, I was thinking, as a department head, and you're managing a department, there are challenges, department's failing. At what point do you acknowledge that? At what point do you admit that to yourself, right? That could be a hard thing for someone to take, I would think. Sometimes it's hard to ask for help. I think it's great that the work you do is helping people lead their organizations, but I think it's also great that people are willing to accept that help when it's needed. That can be, I'm sure, a difficult thing for some people.
Yeah, it's always so rewarding when we're actually invited in by the person who's running the organization or the part of the organization before everything really, really, really falls off the cliff. And, I think that is a function of their own personal level of confidence and the support up chain. If they aren't working for the kind of people who beat them up or the kind of counsel who beats them up, then I think they're a little more empowered to reach out and ask for help.
So maybe walk me through the process on your end. So you get the call, or are you often responding to an RFP, or how is it usually initiated?
I would say that the kind of crisis transition we're talking about where we step in isn't really dealt with on an RFP. People call us and they say, here's our situation. Somebody left. We've discovered all these things. We don't want to bring somebody else in until we figure out what's going on. Can you send someone in to, do an assessment, help us understand where we are, where we need to be, maybe do some interventions to get things lined up. Mm-hmm. And, we come in on that basis, really.
Sometimes we're also coming in after multiple people have left the same position, chronically having an issue with that position. And so we're often in a position of working with either the elected officials or the city manager, general manager, talking to them about why they're not seeing stability in that role. And it can be any number of things. I mean, we work sometimes in very rural areas, and it can be hard to find and keep the right talent.
Mm-hmm. Which is a failure of many things external to the organization. They can't help it. They can't pay as well as big agencies down the road. But it is similar in effect to the employees who are struggling to get things accomplished and gain some traction, because they just were making progress and then boom, the leader's gone, and they have to learn a whole new leader who probably has different ideas, and they have to build all that trust again, and then they do it again and again, and after a while they're like, what's the point here?
Right. So is your typical client one where you are coming in, assessing the organization, and providing kind of a roadmap for getting things back on track?
Our role is consultative.
Okay.
We will help existing leaders in the organization participate in the transition that needs to happen. We will help them find a new leader, to step in and help complete that transition. But we do not take the management of that department on. And thankfully, I just want to say, our typical clients are doing fine. They're not in crisis. We're talking about a slice of the work that we do. Right. Not everyone that we deal with.
I just assumed everyone was in crisis.
Well, there are crises all over the place, but there are also very functional organizations out there, and kudos to them.
Well, let's talk about kind of the whole breadth of services that you provide. Because you're right, we kind of focused on departments that are in crisis, but is that the main thing that you do, or is that just one of many things that RGS does?
One of many things.
Okay.
So we do everything from recruitments to, general human resources or finance support to special projects around any variety of public administration fields. We also administer 11 public agencies.
How so?
So we are responsible for the executive services and or their finance and or clerk of the board services.
Fascinating. What type of agencies would these be?
We have a few GSAs, so groundwater sustainability agencies, and then we've got kind of a mix of other types of organizations, emergency communications, so other JPAs as well.
Okay. So in this case, these organizations, would they have no staff at all of their own?
Correct.
Fascinating. I did not know that this was a thing.
Yeah, for the most part, they are JPAs, and by nature of the JPA structure, either they get in-kind staffing or they all contribute money and pay for something. And in this case, they're paying for us. We do have one unstaffed special district that we also administer, but that's an unusual circumstance that an organization formed like that doesn't have any staff.
Okay. What about community services districts?
Well, I'm sure there are some out there that are unstaffed, but we don't work with them at the moment in that way. We do work with them in consultative ways.
Okay, very interesting. So how would someone who is involved with these organizations find RGS? How does that come about?
Well, we get contacts on our web form probably weekly from an organization where the board is just overwhelmed. They've been trying to do it all themselves, maybe with a bookkeeper, maybe with just counsel, and counsel's doing all sorts of things that are not legal and they're being well overpaid for. And finally, I think sometimes it comes if a board member who's been providing a lot of the services has to retire or really needs to dial it back. But yeah, they've reached out, by phone, by email, by web form.
They find you.
They find us if they need us, which is great. So that can be really rewarding. But one of the other things that we do that I think is also kind of like umbrella big picture is training. We offer a variety of different training programs, analyst boot camp, training specifically focused for public agency analysts and also supervisors and managers. We do really specialized courses that focus right now more on the soft skills, but we're building out a whole suite of training on more technical topics. So HR issues, finance issues as well.
That's great. I find that HR is one of the areas where so many cities struggle. It is so complicated and changes constantly. And then, the legal environment is so challenging too, surrounding HR issues. And it seems like almost every organization that I've been involved in, there's some degree of struggle when it comes to HR. Right? And I think some entities just, I'm not going to say they ignore it, but they don't place enough emphasis there because it's uncomfortable, and maybe they don't have the expertise in-house, and it's just easier to, I'm sure everything will be okay, and then it's not.
So human resources has a lot of rules because people don't always behave well. But fundamentally, we err too much on the side of unregulated behavior, behaving badly, or on the side of I am afraid to be a person with other people and do just good interpersonal, friendly, kind things that I know how to do because what if there's a rule that I break? And this leads us to that dysfunctional organization. One of the cures for dysfunction is to be human together. And that really builds trust. And the leader has a very important role in not just being, I am the boss, but in being a real person who genuinely cares about their employees and knows something about them
Mm-hmm.
And if they aren't that kind of leader because they're afraid, they need to get to be that kind of leader. And if they're the bad behaving leader over here, then we have a different solution for that problem.
Right. Yeah. Sophia, we talked about that HR is a big part of your background, but actually, one thing that you and I have in common is a background in public affairs, public relations, communications. And your title is interesting with RGS. Is it Chief Growth Officer?
That's right.
What does that mean exactly?
So I work with the contracted agencies that we spoke about, and then I also look for different ways to engage our teams. So whether it's finance or HR, not the what are you doing today or tomorrow, but the what are you going to be doing a year from now? What kind of business models make sense? If we're not offering services on an hourly basis, are we looking at things like flat fees? How are we thinking about the way we can connect best with our fellow public agencies in the future?
Okay, fascinating. So I came across something on your website that I had marked down kind of in the notes that we all reviewed before sitting down to do this episode. And based on those notes, Sophia, you pointed out to me that I maybe misunderstood something. And it was this concept of fractional leadership. This is really fascinating to me. So I'd like to dive into this a little bit. I've had the conversation with other city managers and city attorneys just casually in the past. But would it be possible for public entities to share executives, essentially, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we've come to the conclusion that as far as city management goes, that would be very difficult, right? I mean, cities are so complex; they're doing so many things. Yeah, I just can't fathom that could ever be a part-time job for somebody in any one city. But it's very common for cities to contract with law firms to provide municipal city attorney services, right? And someone who has the title city attorney could be the city attorney for 3, 4, 5 cities, or some combination of cities and special districts, right? So that is common. Now, CalPERS has something to say about this these days. They don't like it when you contract with someone and give them the title of department head and you're not treating them like a full-blown city employee. But let's talk about this concept a little bit of fractional leadership. Where are you seeing this concept work effectively?
Outside of CalPERS, for one. So
Yes.
Joint powers, community services districts, and it's happening. There are people out there who have general managers that are only committed to working 40 hours a month even.
Really?
Which is very limited. But if a small district and a small community, if that's really all they can afford and the workload may not be that high, they can get by with less help. And when it comes to RGS, what works nicely is we have people who are exceptionally talented and capable, and they can be delivering services to, as you said, like general counsel, multiple agencies. And there are some real benefits to that. They are dealing with the regulations, and instead of that being fully burdened and committed to one agency, it's being spread across multiple agencies. Mm-hmm. They are going to conferences, and that cost gets spread across agencies. They are learning lessons in one place that they can apply at the other. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that, but it's still a fairly nascent concept in the public sector. But if you look in the private sector, it's a little bit more common because, especially in the startup world, right? You can't afford a full-time HR director when you have 7 people working out of a garage, right? But as you grow, your needs evolve, and sometimes your needs outpace your ability to buy talent at the level that you want. And it's wonderful to be able to access really incredible talent, even if you can't afford the full salary.
Could you ever see this being applied at a city level for city level department heads or even city executive positions, like city manager type positions?
It is being applied.
Really?
Yes. I myself basically functioned as the HR director for 3 or 4 agencies simultaneously. They had no HR positions. They were very small. And I brought an analyst level person or 2 along with me so that we split up the duties in a way that would be appropriate for an HR department. And that's how we provided support for those entities.
Interesting. So you mentioned that there are entities you work with where they might have a general manager that's shared amongst multiple agencies. In those cases, are there other staff members that are full-time? It's just that general manager position that's shared?
In some cases, yes. And in some cases, they're supported by staff at varieties of level that are also spread across multiple agencies.
You must have a complicated relationship with CalPERS.
You could say.
Have they challenged you?
So CalPERS has challenged the common law employment status of some of our former employees, and they've reached a very long way back in the past to do that, which is being adjudicated at the moment. And I could spend a very long time telling you that story. But it also isn't really the way we operate now. I mean, RGS has been in business for 25 years this year. We've evolved considerably in the last 15 years as to how we engage with our clients and what our services look like. So, the fact that there is this ongoing discussion about what is this thing and is it appropriate, what's being adjudicated right now is old news. We need new news. And frankly, CalPERS needs a new set of policies to deal with the modern reality. I understand the desire to have employees pay into the system. Mm-hmm. I hope myself someday to benefit from that system, and I would like that to happen. But I also know that the world is way more dynamic than, get a job, sit in it for 40 years, collect a pension while your replacement sits in the job for 40 years. And the model needs to keep up. And I don't think anyone's trying to deprive either the employees or the pension system of what's their due. They're just trying to get things done, and they need more tools.
I couldn't agree more. I feel that CalPERS has been increasingly aggressive in recent years and expanding their definitions of who is and who isn't an employee, and retroactively. I mean, there are a number of cities here in Riverside County that in their early years of cityhood after incorporation, didn't have the wherewithal to hire full-time people, right? And they hired people from firms, whether it be for HR or finance or, planning or building and safety, and, any number of disciplines, and maintained that arrangement for 10, 15, 20 years. Now they've brought their in-house people in because they've grown, they're more established, they have the revenue streams to do so, they're ready to step up the level of services they're providing to the community. But CalPERS is now, just in the last year or two, going after that and saying, no, that person was an employee of yours for 20 years. And by the way, you owe us $1.5 million, right? And sometimes that person, whether they're employer or not, in question, doesn't want it, right? They want nothing to do with it. And in some cases, that's, I think, partially because their contracts had an indemnification to the city. So if CalPERS wins that, and the city ends up having to pay out, well, they can then go after that person to indemnify the city, and that person could be in a lot of trouble having to come out of pocket, even though the pension benefit would be in their interest. So it's very complicated.
It's not, though, Chris. This concept of common law employment, CalPERS says we apply the Tyberg test. Now, I have the Tyberg test memorized. I think it's carved in my brain. and it is not a bright line test. You can apply it, and CalPERS does, in many, many ways. We don't have a specific weight to the factors. We say control, but nobody's ever defined control. Is it what the contract says? Is it what actually happened? Do you know what actually happened? Did you interview anybody who was there? If you don't really take very specific efforts to outline what this test is, it's all over the map. And that's exactly what's happening. So The other thing CalPERS has done is excuse themselves from applying Government Code 20164, which specifically addresses the 3-year statute of limitations on making corrections payments in and out of the system. 3 years from the date the payment was made or should have been made. You can't go back farther than that, according to the law. But CalPERS says, well, that part doesn't apply. Really? Now, I have an ALJ decision in hand that says, yes, it does. So, hopefully that will be something that moves forward in the system and is adopted. And I think would be hugely helpful to public agencies in general.
Yes. There are an awful lot of those kind of cases going through the system right now. And CalPERS is notoriously slow at working through this thing. The other thing that's fascinating to me is you can appeal a CalPERS decision, but the board you appeal it to is an internal CalPERS board. So you're going to lose that appeal. I think you can appeal it one more time and then you're going to lose that appeal. Ultimately, you have the option of filing the appeal with Superior Court, but
I'm well aware.
Process.
Believe me.
10 years later, you might have a decision. Very, very, very frustrating. So you said that RJS has been in existence for, we say 20 years?
25.
25. What was the genesis of it? What started it? It's fascinating to me, again, that this is a JPA.
So I was not in at the beginning. I didn't join until 2009, and we started in 2001. But as I understand it, there was some discussion in the Bay Area around the need for agencies to have flexibility with their staffing where they got, say, grant funding for a project. And it was a big grant, multi-year project, but wasn't necessarily going to be part of their long-term staffing once the project was completed. Mm-hmm. And they came together and said, wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to acquire and disacquire staff to do these things in a way that, applied the correct expertise, but didn't put employees in a position of, you're in and now you're out, and you're in and now you're out, but allowed them to be flexibly applied where the needs were one project after another. And, it was a fairly basic concept, nothing really revolutionary about it, except that a JPA was created by some forward-thinking public agencies saying, well, we have to have a place for these people to live and somebody to deploy them.
And what were the early clients? Is client the right word for a JPA?
Well, it is the right word.
Okay.
Yes, we're totally, fee-based. If we don't have clients, we will be hungry. In the early days, I think we were mostly serving cities and probably just really in the perimeter of the Bay there.
Okay. Who are the member agencies of the JPA?
At the moment, let's see, Yountville, Napa, Larkspur, Soledad, Walnut Creek, Dublin, and the Citrus Heights Water District.
Okay. So RGS does not operate similar to a risk pool where you, in order to have the services, you become a member of the JPA.
No. Our members are actually a little bit unique in a lot of ways. They buy services from us as other clients do, and the representative on our board is their chief exec. So we are managed by the city manager or the general manager of the special district, not by electeds.
Okay.
So it was designed to be a representative group of the people that we're trying to serve, essentially.
I see. Okay. How did you get involved?
How did I get involved? Well, those disgruntled public employees that are leaving their public employment.
You were one.
I was, and it sounds terrible to say that out loud because I love public service, but I was working at an agency where I had worked layoff lists, the dreaded layoff lists, for like 3 years in a row, and I wasn't really convinced that the list process was necessary, nor that the composition of the lists was really ideally put together to respect the needs of the community. And I did not feel I was being heard in that regard. And it's exhausting to have 3 years of employees crying in your office for 6 months because they might get laid off. So I laid myself off. And I really did not expect to land where I landed.
Did you give yourself a severance?
Well, it was back in the ARA days, the Recovery Act days.
Yes.
So the federal government paid for my COBRA for the first year I was off, which was quite nice of them. But I was going to do something entirely different, and a friend of mine connected me with one of the board members of RGS, and the next thing I knew, I had a job, and I became an HR consultant.
Had you heard of RGS before?
Not at all.
Now, Ashley, you were working for a public affairs firm when we first met.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you went to the water district world, right? How did you find RGS? How did that come about?
So when I was transitioning into a role, I'd been in this new role at the water agency for about a year, and we were about to have an election that would have a ton of turnover. And one of the things we wanted to do prior to that was to get a board handbook in place so that the rules of the road would be transparent and clear for everybody. In hindsight, the new folks didn't love that too much, but we gave it a go. And in searching for someone to help me put together that handbook, I went on the CSDA website and saw RGS as a partner of CSDA. And I said, I made a little mental note. And then I went home that day and I read the entire website and I was like, this is fascinating. How could this be? And I read the board meeting minutes and I emailed Sophia and I said, this is incredible. Like, can we meet and talk about what this is and, how I might join it? I, Chris, like you, have young kids at home. And during the pandemic, I learned that I enjoyed remote work, which I never in a million years thought would appeal to me, but it really did. And the ability for me to, work and then, run out, pick up my kids, come home, and then shut my laptop until they go to bed and then pick it up for a little while in the evenings. Mm-hmm. Incredibly valuable.
I can imagine. Yeah. I have an hour commute now and,
ouch.
It does, it's really the only alone time I ever get in a day. So I don't mind it from that perspective, but it does make it difficult to just, pop home to, take the kids somewhere and then get back to work. That doesn't really happen for me. So I can imagine that's very nice. How are you finding your work with RGS compared to your public sector work?
I was a consultant prior to being in the public sector, so I feel like coming to RGS was very comfortable for me because I had been in that world before. And I like it because there are so many interesting opportunities, challenges, people to connect with on various projects. And, organizations are usually coming in for help on the bigger items, the more strategic things. So you're not doing as much of the mundane work, at least in the arena that I was working in. And I've really enjoyed being able to have the variety and different types of projects with different types of clients.
There are so many public agencies that need something at some point that they just don't have internally, whether it's a reframe of their culture and values so they can get re-inspired to do what they do, whether it's just somebody picking up a task like getting your accounting ready for the audit because, somebody was sick and you missed 3 months worth of journal entries, whatever it is. There's so much need out there, and we have so many people who want to help meet that need. And, we're not restricted by the borders of California, although there is plenty of need right here at home. And we have worked outside the state, and I don't see that we wouldn't respond to need if it came to our attention. Wherever people are trying to do a good job providing services to their local communities.
Yes, let's talk about that. So if I'm an elected official or a city manager or a department head, when do I call RGS?
Early and often. Seriously, I mean, we want to have a relationship with people, and we feel really fortunate that we have had a relationship with people. Even as they move from agency to agency, we're able to maintain that connection. We understand how they operate and what's important to them. They understand what they can rely on from us, and they can bring that pretty easily and confidently to whichever situation needs help.
For people who are listening to this and watching this, and they're working in local government, I want to make sure that there's not confusion as to what can and can't be done in terms of bringing people in to help, right? And kind of the current state of where we are with CalPERS and all of that, right? So bringing RGS in to do an analysis of the organization, that's safe, right? Right. That's right. Now I've got a department that's struggling. Department head is fed up and resigns, goes to work somewhere else. Now I don't have a department head. I've got staff that are, experiencing a hit in morale. Maybe some people in the department have left. I need help. I call RGS. What does that look like beyond the analysis? You said you don't send bodies in to fill roles, but you can help people find professionals to fill those roles. But what does that look like when you come in there to help?
It can look like a number of things. I mean, depending on the size and composition of your staffing of your agency, perhaps another department head or the chief exec picks up that, formal leadership role for that department as an interim assignment while a recruitment is being conducted. Maybe we're helping you with a recruitment. Maybe we're helping you with projects that need to come off of your desk because now you have 2 assignments instead of just 1, right? So you have things that you need to keep moving forward with your community, or developing a program, or developing policies, or whatever it is that the projects are that you want to offload so that you can focus on moving through this transition time as the interim leader. We can help with that sort of stuff. I mean, work is only bundled in ways because we bundle it that way. So we are willing to unbundle a whole lot of work and look at it and say, look, not just because of CalPERS, because that's a stupid reason to do things, but because of the human relationships and connections in your organization and with your community, you, the local leader, need to be the person on point for this. But all this other stuff that you don't have time for anymore, let's look at that. Mm-hmm. How does that need to get done?
Mm-hmm. How is calling RGS different than calling any number of consulting firms?
I think that's a really good question, because in a lot of ways it's not. In a lot of ways it is the same, but I think what I've experienced is a different level of trust, because we are not there to make a profit. We really are there to advance public agencies. That's our mission. People, I think, are warmer and more confident in bringing us into the fold.
Chris, I will say that, while there are many consultants out there who are staffed by former public employees, so our expertise is not unique, there is also, I think, a real confidence that in RGS, that is what we hire. Mm-hmm. And that is what we hire. So when you have a consultant coming to you saying, I understand California public finance, that is true.
I imagine you're not seeing a decline in the number of public agencies that are in need of your help.
No.
Are you overall optimistic about the future of local government?
I think there are many people who still want to serve. I have not seen a lessening in the desire of people in multiple generations to do something good for their community. So that makes me quite optimistic that we will find a way. What that way will look like, I'm not 100% certain.
I think it is hard because the world tends to change a lot more quickly than government. Surprise, surprise.
Yes.
So you see different types of employment arrangements in the private sector that just haven't really resonated yet, or found a home in the public sector. And then there's the broader context too. There are bills like AB 339 that make consulting harder for public agencies.
Right.
So there's a lot out in the environment that I think we have to pay attention to and think about. And it is a little disheartening that public agencies have to always keep an eye out on new ways that they're being limited and tied up. Mm-hmm. And, it feels a little bit like having to fight with your hands tied behind your back.
Right.
So I don't know that I have a great deal of confidence that the legislative framework or regulatory framework in California is going to shift dramatically, but I do think that there are a lot of incredibly smart, capable, talented people at all levels of government. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we get to a place where people can embraced flexibility more deeply.
All of those people haven't left to work for RGS yet. Only some of them.
No, and they haven't left for the private sector either. And we are grateful to have them where they are out there doing really good work.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of really good people in local government. One of my fears is that fewer and fewer people will be attracted to come work in local government just because of the complexity in terms of regulation and because of the kind of the toxic nature we talked about, with the social media and the kind of decline of civility. It's a challenging time to be in local government.
There is a cure for that, though. Leaders need to understand the passion is still there. It's been a little while since I was doing hands-on HR consulting, but I did do a recruitment for an intern for a city that had a university in it. And I wrote them a little brochure that, basically headlined, "Want to change the world." We got so many, and those are unpaid internships, so many applications because these young people, that resonated with them. They wanted to change the world. The leadership of that agency and the leadership of any agency need to be committed to changing the world. When you have people with passion for that and you want to turn them loose to do it, then, you have to find the way, but you can find a way. These regulations are tedious, but they're not insurmountable obstacles. We can still get stuff done. And frankly, we often let them become a reason to not take the steps that need to be taken instead of saying, okay, we're going to deal with that over here. You guys keep on charging down the road of changing the world and we'll fix this.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we need, as a public sector community, to come together and think about the talent pipeline and really not be so laser focused on a prototype of what we think a public servant should be. Are your people working with community colleges in your area to make sure that the curriculum helps effectively feed into the public sector? Are you going out and talking about opportunities in public service, aside from, fire and police, which all kids grow up knowing about, so that people can whet their appetite young and start their education from a place of wanting to go into the public sector and beyond even entry-level positions? Are we thinking about upskilling different types of workers to join the public sector, and how can we make that a smooth transition for people? Because bringing people from the private sector into the public sector, the higher up you go in the organization, the more challenging that can really be. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. So at RGS, we're really trying to look for ways to integrate talent and expertise more seamlessly, and even from the very early stages of someone's career.
My staff hears me say all the time, progress, not perfection, and perfect is the enemy of good, right? We are so knowledgeable in so many things in the public sector. I mean, we have really deep expertise that we overcomplicate a lot of stuff because this could happen and that connects to that, and there's this other thing, and there's a risk over here. Take a step with your team that you've all agreed is a good thing to do for your constituency, whatever that is. Just do it every day. Don't be afraid. Yes, there will be consequences. Yes, of course you should avoid the big pitfalls. And you will, because you're not stupid. You know what you're doing. But you have to make progress. Paralysis from all this analysis is just brutal to the staff. They just get so discouraged.
I have this discussion often with engineers.
Probably planners.
Yes, the details matter. And yes, we want to mitigate risk, right? But we don't want to lose sight of the big picture. Where are we trying to head? What are we trying to accomplish for the community, right? And I think so often we just get so bogged down in the details that we forget where we're trying to go, right? And we prioritize, trying to mitigate every little risk, and then nothing gets done. One of the things I talk about a lot is that I think we have to do a much better job in local government of telling our stories. Right? And I think, with your background in communications, it's probably something that resonates with you. It's something that my friend Sam Tolles talks about a lot, right? That local government's exciting. It can be, right? I mean, we have the ability to shape what a community will ultimately be It's intoxicating. It can be, right? But there's also a lot of negative out there. And if we don't tell our stories, if we don't humanize local government, then it's all too easy for people to be cynical and look at government as the faceless machine, right? And what I'm trying to do within my organization is implement a communications program where we're being not just transparent. Everyone uses the word transparency, and it is transparent, but in a way that really tells the story of where we're trying to go as a community and what the staff are doing within the community. This isn't just government, right? This is, Sally, who's doing this job for you every day, right? And she does a great job of it. And, once people get to know the people and it becomes, a human being that's working on their behalf, it sets a whole different tone.
It really does. And I think it goes beyond storytelling. It's great to have really strong messaging that's human, like you said, pointing to the people behind the scenes. Parks and Rec folks are notoriously fabulous at that. But it also is really important to remember that the voices that you're hearing the loudest are not the average person in your community. So the people who come and get up and speak their 3 minutes every board meeting or every other council meeting or what have you, those people are on one side of the bell curve. Then there's the other brilliant side of the bell curve of people who are so grateful. And I remember people bringing me Christmas gifts from the community because they were so grateful.
Wow.
People have such good hearts, and they do, some of those people, do really want to connect with their local government, but
I've not experienced that yet. Christmas gift.
I'm sorry.
That's impressive.
But the people in the middle are the ones we really need to be focused on because they're the ones who are too busy. They're going to soccer practice. They are working overtime or working a second or third job. They're the ones who are, out there experiencing and enjoying the life and community that you are helping build as a public servant, but they don't have the capacity necessarily to engage as much. So trying to find creative ways to hear and listen to those people is really important.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's true.
And I'm sorry that no one's ever brought you gifts, Chris. That's just not.
Well, not a Christmas present, not like a member of the community. Like, oh, I just really appreciate you. Here's a Christmas present.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know what?
really,
My one of my most meaningful experiences. We were raising rates for water in Palm Springs, and this one couple came to every rate hearing workshop we held. We held about 6 workshops, and man, she was always there. And really frustrated that rates are going up, don't have an ability to pay. But through the process, just talking with her, and we got to the point where she was sending me pictures of her dog dressed up in costumes for Halloween and, checking in with me at all the community events when we had a booth. And just when you can engage with the community in such a way where they really see you as a person and they know that you care and are exhibiting kindness, it's really hard for them to want to push back on you about an extra $2 a month on their water bill.
Right.
Well, that's true for employees too. We started out here talking about dysfunction in organizations, and I have to say I watched a really terrific leader bring values to life in an organization because he was willing to say, this is what I value about the work that we do, and we should act on those values every day. And I'm going to do it like this, and I'm going to work with each of you to figure out how to act on those values. And, that was very, very impressive in turning an extremely broken organization into something that is very functional today.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, I want to really thank you for being here today. What you're doing is fascinating. RGS is really unique as an entity. I think it's something that not a lot of people are even aware of. But no, thank you so much for coming. I know this has been educational for our listeners, and we will make sure people know how to get in touch with you. If there's one takeaway from today's conversation, it's this: broken departments are not personal failures, but rebuilding them requires courage, humility, and intentional leadership. For those listening, if your organization feels stretched, fractured, or at the brink, you are not alone, and recovery is possible. And maybe most importantly, these periods when things feel like they're breaking are often the defining leadership moments of your career. If you'd like to learn more about how Regional Government Services supports agencies during moments of transition and recovery, or if you'd like to connect with Sophia or Ashley, we'll include links in the show notes and YouTube description. If you're at a point where you're questioning whether to stay in the profession, we'll also link to episode 7 with Jacob Green as a resource. If you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share this episode with someone in local government who might need to hear it. And if you want to dig deeper and have greater insights on the issues we're talking about in this episode and others facing local government leaders, you can join the Gov360 email newsletter. You'll find the link in the episode description. Thank you for joining us on Gov360. Until next time, govern boldly, my friends.